It's been said that buying and moving a house is one of the most stressful things we can do in life. In a world city like London, attractive to property developers and investors because the market benefits from its popularity for work, study, leisure and tourism, house prices and rent levels can become out of reach to people on modest incomes, unless you're prepared to share. You may have experienced the headache of finding somewhere to live, the frustration of dealing with real estate agents and, perhaps, the dreaded prospect of being gazumped. This being a British term for a situation where a seller raises the asking price at the last moment, leaving a buyer in a precarious situation, forced into a bidding war to ensure a roof over your head when choices are few and competition is high. The fear of being left with nowhere to live is nothing new. In the Victorian era, when overcrowding was endemic, the shortage of affordable accommodation was so acute that people walked the capital streets for miles searching for a room, and if they found one, the bidding war on rent could be outrageous. This was not a social evil that only Londoners had to battle with, for you could witness the same difficulties in many a town and village throughout the country, but in London, it was amplified to such an extent that it caught the attention of political, religious and social commentators. Today, you will hear an account of the desperate state of housing in London in the 1890s by a Victorian journalist who spent several years living among the working class of the inner city and, lamenting the lack of action from the government, sought to bring wider attention to the shocking plight of many. Having experienced both the suffering of people struggling to find a place to live and met with public officials in health and housing, he emphasizes that the terrible experiences he describes and the conversations he reports are truthful. These are the stories of people with nowhere to live. Before we move on, if you're interested in history like this, and you want to find out more about what life was really like for people in the past, please consider subscribing for more content. If you'd like to support what we make for you, check out the description for links to ways you can help us continue bringing the past alive. One evening, not long ago, there came to the gates of a South London workhouse a North Country mechanic with his wife and 3 children. The man wore a pained and worried look. The woman seemed about to faint. 2 of the children cried. "For heaven's sake, let my wife and children come in," says the man to the porter at the gate. "I'll pay for their keep if you'll give them shelter. We've been tramping the streets for miles hereabouts since 10 o'clock this morning, but can't find house or rooms to let at any price." "It's against the regulations," says the poor law official. "Then what on earth am I to do? I've just got a good job in this district to start on Monday. We travelled to London by the night train, thinking we might get a house the first thing in the morning, as I was prepared to pay a decent rent. But though we've spent all the day searching, we can't find room anywhere. All day long my wife has been taking one side of a street and I the other, while the children waited at the corner. We would have gone into tenements or apartments or anywhere, but not a solitary room is to be had. As it grew dark, in our despair, we went to the police station, and they advised me to bring the wife and children to the workhouse till such time as I could find them a place outside. But we've no room to spare here either," says the gate porter. "Why, we've already got nearly 200 more people than the house is certified for. Still, if the police sent you, I suppose you must be admitted." So the man parted with his wife and children at the workhouse gates, spent the night in a common lodging-house himself, the whole of Sunday in a further futile search, but it was not until a full fortnight had gone by, during which he paid for his wife and bairns' keep in the workhouse, that he found a place to take them to. Then it was not to a house, as he desired, but to tenements, not near his work, as he wanted, but 2 miles away. For the first time, then, in the history of cities, we see skilled and sober workmen with good jobs who are willing to pay even a high rent, failing utterly to find houses at any price, and finally sheltering their families behind workhouse walls, with an offer to bear the cost of their keep, rather than bring them under the contaminating influence of the common lodging-house. But do workmen's wives and children come out into the light again the better for this sort of housing? Without question, no. They see nothing pleasant, hear nothing good, learn nothing wholesome in the workhouse. Everything in the workhouse taints all who touch it. Ah, but it may be argued, this is an isolated instance, happening to a family unused to London, who would have been better advised to stay in their native north. Unhappily, the case is by no means exceptional. Let me call in others to confirm the practice. Happening the other day to light upon the Reverend Arthur Jeffson in the offices of the London School Board, of which he is a member, I named the affair to him. I knew that Mr. Jeffson, as Vicar of St. John's, Walworth, also sat on the local Board of Guardians. "Why, bless you," said he, when I told my tale, "we've had at least some half-dozen similar cases in our own workhouse, women and children admitted temporarily with the husband at work, because they were absolutely unable to get accommodation outside for love or money. Not a doubt about it, there are people today in our workhouses who would come out tomorrow could they get shelter elsewhere, but they cannot, even at excessive rents. There was never a time when rooms were harder to get, or rents so high, or competition so keen among workpeople to get houses. They compete against each other for houses as their masters compete for trade. One will offer £6 and a shilling a week more in rent, and another will deposit £2 or £3 as security for the key. They understate the number of their children so as to improve their chances. They will take a house, no matter how insanitary. Those who intend to leave will levy blackmail on those who want to come in. With all this going on, landlords can well nigh get any rent they want. Such a state of things has never been known in London since the Great Fire. Rarely, indeed, in the poorer quarters, is a house ever empty at all. People get to know when the outgoing tenants are timed to leave, so you have 2 vans at the door at the same time, the one loading furniture coming out, the other unloading furniture going in. Should it really happen that a house is left empty, then you get as many as 20 or 30 applicants in the same day. As things are at present, I learn, on the authority of a large estate agent, that within a radius of 2 miles from the Elephant and Castle, there is not a vacant house to be had. A firm of house agents in the New Kent Road have lists of people waiting for houses 400 deep. So hard-pressed are the poor for want of room to live that they can only be got out of condemned houses by being evicted. Down in Hoxton Market, a magistrate's closing order was made against a house because of its filth and stinks. Yet the families inhabiting it clung to the place as for very life, there being no other house or tenements to be had thereabouts. In the end they had to be evicted, and their chattels stacked in the street. 1 or 2 of them were taken in by friendly neighbours, who thereby so much overcrowded their own rooms that the vestry had to issue notices under the Public Health Act to stop the overcrowding. But 3 of the displaced families had to be removed from the street to the workhouse in Kingsland Road. I could point also to recent cases in Wapping. It was another eviction, whereby 50 people were turned into the street, about 30 of whom were children under 14 years of age. Here again, many of them failed to find any shelter save St. George's Workhouse. Can nothing be done to remedy the evils of overcrowding in our midst? Asked a vestryman in that district the other day. We are doing all we can, was the chairman's reply of despair, but all our efforts seem as drops of water in the ocean. The houses in the district are inhabited from the top floor to the basement, and where 6 people once occupied a house, there are now as many as 24. Hitherto we have always looked upon the houseless as the destitute. Today London has become so overcrowded that many artisans and labourers in work are also of the houseless class. At the time I write, I know of my own personal knowledge that there are several families in Poplar Workhouse from the sole reason that they cannot find accommodation outside. The men who are in work are living in the meantime in lodging houses. Look at this case which recently came before the Bermondsey Vestry. A labourer, who had left his wife and children in the workhouse, at last found a room and promptly secured it for his family. At once the room became overcrowded under the Public Health Act, and the vestry threatened to put the bylaws into operation. The labourer pointed out that if they did, he would have no alternative but to take his family back to the workhouse. I am not aware whether the vestry stayed its hand or not, but one would suppose they did, for about the same time they received a letter from the local Board of Guardians, stating that a number of workmen had applied to leave their wives and children in the workhouse while they themselves went out to their work, being unable to get house room anywhere. Let us take the word of relieving officers themselves. One of them, connected with the Poplar Union, has made public the following case. I had the case of a carman in regular employment and earning from 24 to 26 shillings a week. Through overcrowding, he and his wife and their 4 children, aged respectively 12, 9, 8 and 5, were ejected from Eastward Street, Devon's Road. While under notice they made every effort to get rooms, but failed. They continued their search after eviction, sleeping in the meantime in passages and in stables. All this may seem incredible, but by the very nature of their calling, relieving officers are sceptical, and I can vouch for every word of this being correct. About that time there was a good deal of rain, and at last the family came to me in a most sad state. The father explained the position, but I said that a man in the receipt of 24 or 26 shillings could not be considered destitute. Becoming desperate upon hearing this, he said that sooner than allow his poor little children to undergo any further suffering, he would throw up his job, and then the whole of them would have to be admitted. Certainly, according to the strict letter of the law, the family were not destitute, but they were destitute in so far as they could get no shelter and could not afford the charges of a hotel. And so I gave an order for admission. Before they were formally entered in the books, the father went out to make a final effort, but returned with the information that he could not succeed. The fact is, as I was told by Mr. Will Crooks, London County Council, himself a member of the Poplar Board of Guardians, the people are simply at their wits' ends for want of house accommodation. They will do anything, pay anything, endure anything, only that they may find a place to shelter in. Down in Suffolk, the other day, a workman complained in the local court that he had tramped the streets for hours seeking a house. His wife had gone as far as Walthamstow. Neither of them, however, had heard even of a single room to let, not to mention a house, and were now helpless as to what to do or where to go. With the assistance of 2 friends, I tried a test case not long ago. We selected an area in the Tower Hamlets comprising a population of about 200,000 people. After a week's searching and inquiry, one of us, for 2 whole days in succession, we at last heard of a place, and got the address of the firm to apply to, in another part of London. It fell to my lot to go. We made our discovery late in the night, so I turned out early the next morning and reached the firm's office before any member of the staff. Not, however, before several women who had come from the distant district after the same house. Other women arrived before the office was opened. I let them all go in first, and at last got an audience myself. "See those women who have just passed out one by one?" said the smart young man, pointing towards the house with his pen. "They are all after the same house, and we have bid them against each other till we are now getting 15 shillings for a house that once only brought in 7 shillings and 6pence. Now, if you go one better and make it 16 shillings, the house is yours."